welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Unpacking Past Relationship Baggage episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who are struggling in relationship, how to communicate effectively, build trust, and deepen intimacy so they can be the best version of themselves in relationship and live the life they love. Now, I'm sure you've experienced or at least heard of folks who bring a lot of emotional baggage to a relationship, right? Well, over the years, I've seen this a lot in my practice. And sometimes there are bright red flags, and sometimes it can be subtle. Either way, unpacked emotional baggage from a relationship is not good. And I have to say, I've experienced bringing past relationship baggage to a relationship before I got help to unpack that baggage. It was part of the reason why I overlapped relationships early in my young adult life, and wondering why the same thing kept happening no matter the relationship. Bringing your emotional baggage from your past relationship or relationships to your current relationship can have a serious impact. And if you don't unpack some of that baggage, it can lead to big problems. One example that comes to mind is Randy, not his real name. He was once a very trusting and open-hearted man, and his past relationship baggage got the best of him. Randy had been married for almost 13 years. He had started a corporate cleaning consulting business a few years after he got married. And Randy had more than tripled his salary over the 13 years since he got married. Well, he ended up going through a nasty divorce. I mean, it got ugly. His ex cheated on him, yet Randy lost the custody battle for his kids. His ex got the house, and because of the disparity in income, she got 65% of the marital assets. And this really scarred Randy emotionally and left him bitter. He was full of anger and resentment towards his ex and what he saw as the unfairness of the divorce settlement. So much so that it made it hard for him to maintain any relationship moving forward. He just couldn't let go of what his ex put him through. He started dating after a while, but his heart really wasn't in it. He had also gotten pretty cynical about love and relationships. He would make blanket statements like, "All women are just out to get whatever they can from me." Not the best attitude when you're trying to find a new partner. And needless to say, Randy had his guard up pretty high, and he didn't have a very positive outlook for a future relationship. Then he met Crystal, not her real name. She was a warm, sensitive, and compassionate person who could see through Randy's guarded walls. And she recognized the pain underneath those walls because she too had gone through a painful divorce. She had been to therapy to help heal from her divorce and could definitely see the signs of the baggage Randy was holding on to. Yet she had really strong feelings for him and she could relate. So she decided to give him the space he needed to work through his pain, because that was what she needed after her divorce. Now, it was all good and well at first, but after some time, Randy's emotional baggage started creeping into his interactions with Crystal. He struggled to fully open up to Crystal, fearing that he would be hurt again. He was often looking for signs that she might be cheating on him. He found himself comparing her to his ex at times and saying stuff like, "This is what she used to do." And when he would get angry, he sometimes called Crystal by his ex's name by mistake, which really hurt Crystal. Randy's lack of trust and emotional distance led to a lot of misunderstandings and arguments between them. Crystal felt disconnected, shut out, and unable to reach this man that she cared so much for. It had gotten to the point where Crystal had to do something. It happened the last time he called her by his ex's name. Now, Crystal calmly and assertively told him that that was the last time he was going to call her by his ex's name. And she seized the moment to suggest Randy get some help to process his divorce and the negative feelings he had towards his ex that were getting in the way of their relationship. Well, the timing was perfect, and Randy agreed. He could see what it was doing to his relationship and what it was doing to him, and he knew he needed help. Randy worked really hard to deal with his emotional baggage. He worked on having compassion for himself for how hard it was to go through that nasty divorce. He worked on forgiveness, understanding that forgiving his ex was more for him than it was for his ex, so that he could release the charge connected to his unpleasant memories. Randy also worked on forgiving the whole divorce situation. Randy got in touch with his feelings and was able to process all that he went through in a positive way. He learned about mindfulness and how it could help him be more present in his relationship with Crystal. And over time, Randy started to let go of the bitterness and the cynicism that had kept him trapped. He began to see Crystal for who she truly was, a person who was separate from his past, that she was not his ex. And just because he went through a traumatic divorce didn't mean that Crystal was going to do the same to him. Randy became more vulnerable and trusting in Crystal, and most importantly, trusting in himself. Well, their relationship really grew as they both made big efforts to communicate openly, to practice empathy, and create a new life together. And while there were still ups and downs, and the journey wasn't easy, it was well worth the effort. The big part here was Randy's willingness to confront his emotional baggage and seek help that basically transformed his relationship with Crystal. They were committed to supporting each other's healing journey, and over time, their love and relationship grew stronger. Randy realized that not every woman was out to hurt him, and that a new chapter of love and happiness in relationship was possible. So you can see from Randy and Crystal's story how emotional baggage from a past relationship can impact new relationships. And if you don't unpack that baggage before you get into another relationship, you are setting yourself up for a potential relationship disaster and risk repeating the pattern over and over and wondering why the same things keep happening in your relationship, just like I did when I was a young adult, not even aware that I was carrying any emotional baggage. So here are some ways not unpacking that baggage can impact your relationship. I already mentioned in Randy and Crystal's story where Randy had a hard time letting go of his anger and resentment about the divorce. There was his lack of trust, looking for signs that Crystal was cheating, him shutting down emotionally and withdrawing from Crystal, his insecurity, and those comparisons he kept making, even calling Crystal by his ex's name. Ouch! Well, some other ways that not unpacking that baggage can impact your relationship is having communication issues, especially if he had communication issues in his previous relationship. It may make it hard to communicate in his current relationship. There can be a lack of vulnerability. If he's been hurt emotionally, it may make it hard for him to be vulnerable. There are emotional triggers. Sometimes an incident or interaction in his current relationship can trigger a memory from the previous relationship where he was hurt. There could also be issues with forgiveness because he has not forgiven what he experienced in his past relationship, and he may have a hard time forgiving who he's currently in relationship with. And there could also be a fear of repeating past mistakes. He may have a lot of anxiety about making those mistakes again and not being fully present in his relationship, or that he can't relax and just be himself in the relationship and deal with it when issues come up. So hopefully you can obviously see now why it is so important to unpack the emotional baggage from past relationships. And know that it is possible, though. And I have to say, a lot of the times the emotional baggage can come from way before our adult relationships. It can come from our childhood and the family dynamics we experience. That's why it can run so deep. So just know that you can heal. It starts with a willingness to heal and the commitment to take action to let the healing begin. It takes courage and strength to seek help, and a lot of work, and yet it is well worth the time and effort, the investment that you put into it. I have a quote from Steve Maraboli that brings it all home. He says, quote, "The truth is, unless you let go, unless you forgive yourself, unless you forgive the situation, unless you realize that the situation is over, you cannot move forward," unquote. Well, that is the truth, no doubt. And on that note, we will wrap up this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Unpacking Past Relationship Baggage episode. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you got something out of it. All right, here I go with another question for you. Do you ever find your relationship kind of falling into a lull? A little too routine or even boring? Well, it can happen, even to the best relationships. One way to add some spice and newness to your relationship is to add some rituals. Find out what I mean by that by checking out the next episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Relationship Rituals episode. And remember, if you have any issues in your relationship you need help with, or have any comments or feedback about the podcast, topics you'd like for me to address, I really would love to hear from you. Please email me at bill@pathways2livingwell.com. That's bill@pathways2livingwell.com. And if you couldn't write that down, you can also find my email address in the show notes. And if you know someone who you think might benefit from listening to this podcast, please share the link and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.